GRIS is a game that has already inspired countless conversations, on YouTube and elsewhere. People have talked at length about its message, its visual metaphors, how it represents the 5 stages of grief, its use of color theory, the creatures you encounter along the way, and what they all represent. Much has been said already, so what is there left to say about GRIS? For starters, I feel like there's some small details in the game that haven't been discussed in great detail yet. Such as how the shape of your dress communicates emotional growth, or how the developers seem to make the deliberate choice to have the player jump off a cliff whenever they enter a new chapter. But more importantly, I think I can add one other thing of value to the conversation. You see, I've been fortunate enough not to go through a grand, life-altering loss, at least not yet. But I have experienced something in the past which resulted in a period of depression and deep loneliness. I won't go into the details, but what matters is that after this period of sorrow, I had become a different person. I had changed. And that's when I started calling myself an optimist. I had survived my lowest point in life, so what could stop me from doing that again? In this video, I'd like to take a closer look at the abilities you unlock in 3 major chapters of the game: anger, bargaining, and depression. In each of these chapters, the player gains a new ability used to progress to the next. The reason I picked these 3 specific abilities is that each of them visibly alters the shape of your character's dress, which communicates a clear, metaphorical change in the emotional state of our main character. To me, this change is a valuable component for getting through emotional difficult times. Now, I'd like to make clear that the point of this video analysis is not to tell you what GRIS is about. I've played the game, and it gave me some thoughts on my own perspective that I'd like to share with you. I'd also like to clarify that I'm not a therapist, and anything I say in this video is just my own interpretation. If you think differently on any of the topics I'll be discussing, feel free to let me know in the comment section. Then without further ado, let's take a look at GRIS through the eyes of an optimist, and at what the game can tell us about the process of changing oneself as a necessary component to overcome hardship. The first significant ability you unlock in GRIS is a heavy block form. You gain it early on in the anger chapter, and it immediately becomes essential. In this form, GRIS slams into the ground with weight, resisting the howling winds that previously pushed her back. Later in the game, you'll use the same ability to break fragile objects or to weigh down mechanical structures. But its most memorable use is to stay put, to remain unmoved. At a first glance, the ability seems like just an expression of anger, or maybe stubbornness. After all, later on you'll be found going on a rampage, breaking things left and right. And not letting yourself get pushed around, that's a sign of stubbornness, right? While I think that conclusion is not entirely wrong, I feel like there's a more profound takeaway to be had here. When I was going through those dark times in the past, I used to go sit on the roof of our school building during recess, just brooding there, alone in the biting winds of winter, like the edgy teenager I was at the time. But sitting there was somehow comforting to me. I could take my mind away from the things going on in my life and just focus on my own breathing in an attempt to fight off the chills that the wind brought with it, one breath at a time. I often think back on that moment, and the anger chapter in GRIS reminds me of that time. In hindsight, I feel like I was subconsciously trying to achieve a certain numbness to the cold wind, but also to the emotional pain I was going through. Just like GRIS is trying to ignore this hurricane of distress. The ancient Stoics state that distress is one of the four irrational passions. The virtuous person is not passionless in the sense of being unfeeling like a statue. Rather, he mindfully distinguishes what makes a difference to his happiness, virtue and vice, from what does not. This firm and consistent understanding keeps the ups and downs of his life from spinning into psychic disturbances or pathologies the Stoics understood passions to be. Maybe the heavy block form that GRIS takes on doesn't necessarily embody anger or stubbornness. As an optimist, I like to believe it's the shape of stoicism, the ability to stand strong in the face of turmoil and distress. The second major ability you gain in GRIS is your wings. You unlock it in the chapter associated with bargaining. Mechanically, it functions as this game's version of a double jump and a glide ability, both well-known staples in platforming games. But GRIS adds on to the double jump ability by allowing the player to launch themselves into the air using groups of red butterflies strategically positioned in the world. Where the heavy block form was all about being immovable, the wings allow the player a new freedom of movement. It feels like you've been unshackled, like some kind of weight has been lifted off your shoulders. To reflect that contrast visually, the outer layer of GRIS's dress opens up and splits into two dynamic wings that propel you forward. Compared to the block ability, it is clear to everyone that this form embodies movement. To me, this movement and the ability to reach new heights represents a certain hopefulness, a desire to take that necessary next step, a longing to reach a new viewpoint. GRIS doesn't immediately reach that new viewpoint, but that's just how that works in life as well. When I was at my lowest point, something clicked in me. After reaching rock bottom, it was reassuring to know that the only way forward was up. It still took me well over a year to fully process the negative emotions plaguing my mind, but clinging to the single hopeful thought that things are in the incline is what allowed me to survive those lonesome times. In the depression chapter of the game, you come across vast pools of deep water. At first, there is no way to deliberately dive below the surface. Without her footing, GRIS can only paddle along the surface of the water. Later in the chapter, you do unlock the ability to swim, and this time, your dress flares out like the bell of a jellyfish. Using this jellyfish form, you can quickly swim below the water, and the game leads you down a deep underwater cave system. Where the heavy block form or the wings were both used in some interactive puzzle-like sections earlier in the game, the jellyfish form is not. Aside from navigating the depths of this cave system, there isn't much interaction between the environment and the ability the jellyfish form offers. The only real change happening here is that you can now dive deeper into the abyss. So what does that mean? The swimming ability takes the shape of a jellyfish, but there's an incongruency here between that and the speed and agency with which you swim. Jellyfish in real life don't decide to go anywhere. They just drift along, letting the current take them where it wants. And to me, that's exactly the point of this jellyfish form. Allow me to explain. If we're talking about the 5 stages of grief, which is the whole theme of the game, depression is the first chapter where GRIS is done fighting off her own emotions. No more resisting, no more bargaining. For the first time, she allows herself to bathe in the weight of her own emotions, drifting around in a dark ocean of loneliness. And that's a lot like what depression can feel like. There's no more control, just the crushing weight of mental agony. But I'm an optimist. So what is the takeaway here? Well, for starters, feeling things is a natural thing to do. Despite how you think you might process negative emotions, in order to fully come to peace with them, you always first have to face them head on. And that's not a bad thing. Sometimes we forget that it's okay to have feelings, to cry or to scream, and that especially goes for my fellow men out there. Emotions are not a sign of weakness. They are a sign of your humanity. If you're going through a hard time right now, regardless how big or small, you should try slowly taking it all in for once. Because sometimes, just like that jellyfish, if you drift for long enough, you'll eventually find yourself stranded at the end of that ocean. GRIS uses audio and visuals as metaphors to paint an abstract picture of what the main character is going through. And it does this consistently for every little detail down to the very meaning of each transformation. I've talked about multiple different things in this video now, but there's one more thing I'd like to touch upon. Earlier I mentioned something about the developer's choice to let the player jump off a cliff in order to enter a new chapter. Some players might have just jumped off without a second thought after the game led them to this point. And I can't blame them. After all, there's nothing else to do here really. And the game has already established that there's no consequences to falling from great heights. But when I reached that cliff, it struck me as peculiar. As a first-time player, there's no knowing what's down there, and the player has to make the deliberate choice to jump in order to go forward. This could be a metaphor for many things, but I've come to the following conclusion. Change is a frightening thing. Not only when your surroundings change, like when you lose someone near and dear to you, but also when something requires you to change yourself. When you need to take on a different approach. Whether it's to stay unfazed in the face of turmoil, or to take on a more hopeful attitude, or to just allow yourself to feel those true emotions. You never know what will become of you after such a change. Just like we can't see what awaits us at the bottom of this cliff. If there's one thing I'd like you to take away from this video, it's that sometimes we need to change in order to grow emotionally. Sometimes we just need to trust in that process and take that metaphorical leap of faith, wherever it might take us.